In 1991, the very successful rock band U2 went to Germany to record a new album. There were a whole lot of struggles and challenges going on within the band, differences of opinion. They'd been enormously successful through the 80s, but now they're at a point of change, of something new needing to happen, or they'd blow apart, disintegrate and go their own ways. They went to Germany and they landed there on the day of reunification of the nation, where the walls, the Iron Curtain had been broken down. This wall that divided the city of Berlin, where they were, had been broken down, and this nation that was so different political ideologies for decades had come together as one, with all their differences. And maybe that was a hope-for sign for the band in their own struggles to find a new way forward. Anyway, they took a bunch of songs that they were working on, and as they sat down in the studio, they realised none of them were ready for recording. They just weren't right. Nothing was working. And the differences and niggles between the band, the conflicts and the challenges were not helping. At one point in the session, the lead guitarist, The Edge, was sitting trying to work through a couple of sections of a bridge for one of the songs, trying to get them to work, to find out the way forward. Nothing was working. But the producer of the album came up and said to him, "Look, how about you put those two bits that you've been playing together, join them together and see what happens." And he did, and he played with it. And as he's playing, the others stopped what they were doing and came and listened. And then Bono, the lead singer and often lyricist, picked up a microphone and began singing, ad-libbing. And he was inspired by the sound that The Edge was making, but also by a letter that he'd written to the Dalai Lama in response to a request of the Dalai Lama. And the first line said, we are one, but we are not the same. And as he started singing, maybe it was this experience of the conflict of the band, the four members each pushing in their own directions, wanting to do their own things, not working together, not finding this common way forward, bringing the uniqueness together to add more to the final product, but each doing their own thing. Maybe it was the stories he'd heard of a religious father and his gay son who were in conflict and fighting and hurting each other, or the divisions within relationships of people he knew. One of the band members and his wife were falling apart. Their marriage was crumbling and would collapse in months to come. Or the conflicts between parents and children, or communities, even their own community in Ireland, the religious and political tensions that have been going on for centuries. This divided world and the relationships and conflict that were all around them and that was inside this band. And he's saying these words, one. And it talks about, we are one life, one love, one blood. We are sisters and brothers. We're one, but we're not the same. And we get to hold each other. And he says later that was a sign of grace. That it's not we've got to hold each other. It's not a demand. It's we get to. We get to hold one another in our human frailty. And it's this recognition that our human lives are vulnerable and humble, frail, and we need each other. That none of us is complete. That none of us holds the whole picture or the whole knowledge. None of us knows everything or can do everything. We each are unique creations with unique experiences, unique ways of seeing the world, unique ways of thinking and things that we can do and we like to do. And when we bring all this to the table is richer. And the banquet there is shared by all. In this lockdown, we're discovering, or we're identifying essential services, people of essential services. We're identifying that there are people in our community that are quite essential in this time of crisis. And they're often people we don't recognise fully. It's the frontline people. Yes, there's the doctors and medicos who bring that high level expertise, but there's the nurses and the nursing assistants and porters and people in hospitals at the front line, or AMBOs and other people who are working with people who are deeply sick and ill. There are our teachers. I think though every parent who's having to deal with homeschooling has got suddenly a higher, much higher value of the teachers that look after their children every day and care for them. And the teachers who are dealing with kids in this changing time. Of people who are working in our aged care systems and caring for the most vulnerable people in our society that are often forgotten. Or the childcare workers, the childcare minders and workers who look after the children of essential workers and our children so we can work. We're discovering in this time of pandemic what's really important. Work. Many people can't work. They can't go to their place of business. Their businesses are closed. They're running out of money. They can't work. And work not just for the sake of making money, but of being industrious, of contributing, of doing something that feels good and is meaningful, is important. We're recognising the importance of relationships. We're not able to sit down at the same table and share a meal with people we care about and love and associate with. Life in this pandemic is revealing some of the stresses and the strains. It's hard for people to live with themselves. All the toys and things that we have in life don't make much difference. In our world, we need food and essential items. And so other essential workers are people who work in our supermarkets and provide food and cop the criticism and the flack of people who don't like to wear masks or don't want to abide by the rules for the common good. And we're seeing those conflicts break people open. We saw that rally, that march, that demonstration the other day in which people are standing up for their own individual rights over and against everyone else. I have the right not to participate in society the way everyone else does. I can do what I like. I don't have to wear masks. I don't need vaccines. I don't need to believe in this pandemic. I can just get on with it. And meanwhile, others are dying of a deadly virus. I thought of all these things this week as I read an ancient letter to a church in Ephesus that no longer exists. But the letter writer began in the letter talking about the wonders, this God who created all things and is there with us and holds us in wonder and invites us into this bigger way of living and being. And in the particular part I wrote that made me think of that U2 song One, it talks about one faith, one life, one God, one church, one baptism. Religious symbols for this little Christian community, but a Christian community was formed of different people from different religious backgrounds, different cultures, different traditions coming together. And it talks about one faith, but the one faith is not a belief system that we all just think. It's not a narrow belief system we hold to a theological enterprise. It's the faith in believing and trusting in this infinite God, this God in whom is love and grace, who is at the heart of all things and invites us into this deeper experience of life. And through this part of the letter, the author talks about how we're not to be dragged down by simplistic notions, false beliefs that take us away from deeper truth and meaning and reality, take us away from being united in one, in all our differences, holding our differences together, but being one. It says grow up into maturity and fullness of life, and that it's a responsibility of all of us to share in this way of helping one another to grow into the fullness of who we can be, the fullest experience and expression of who we are, to become the people that we are created to be, and to live into this reconciled community which grows out into the world for the sake of the common good and the well-being of the whole earth. And it's a story of Jesus that invites us into being the best we can be with one another, realising that the differences and the uniqueness we bring will contribute to something bigger and better and greater. And the four members of that band, U2, when they realised that they each had something unique to offer, and came from a different direction but brought it together and held that in a unity, they found their new sound. It began with that song one and took them in a new direction. And they went home back to Ireland and they recorded the album Achtung Baby. And in another story that I've read this week from John's story of Jesus in chapter 6, it talks about the bread of life. It goes on from what we said last week about eating what is deeply meaningful. When we filled our bellies with food, bread, what is our deeper yearning still? What is that thing that will sustain us more fully and deeply, more truly? What is it in our lives that we need to feed on to nurture our spirit, our mind and our body? And both these stories are about that, about finding our way into God, who loves us, who holds us, and who joins us together in one community, one body, one people, the commonwealth of the whole world, God's people, chosen and loved, all of us. Amen.